The British won the hill, but they lost something far greater. This wasn't just a bloody clash, it was the moment America's Revolution proved it could fight, bleed, and never back down. But how did a misnamed hill, poor planning, and a supposed defeat end up terrifying the greatest empire on earth? What made General Howe hesitate for the rest of the war? And why do Americans remember Bunker Hill with pride, as if it were a triumph? This isn't just about redcoats and rebels, it's about a message carved in blood and the spark that turned protest into revolution. Let's go back to the night the Patriots built a rebellion, one shovel of dirt at a time. On June 17, 1775, American militiamen clashed with British regulars in a ferocious battle at Bunker Hill. This bloody British win came at great cost and demonstrated the Patriots' determination, securing the engagement's place in Revolutionary War history. That the hill known as Bunker's Hill in Charlestown be properly secured and held, and that any high ground on Dorchester Neck likewise be fortified. So read the directive issued by a committee of the Massachusetts Provincial Congress in early June 1775. This unofficial governing body entrusted the responsibility to the Council of War, composed of General Artemas Ward, the ever-committed Dr. Joseph Warren, and other senior officers positioned around Boston. Their orders were simple yet weighty. Take any necessary steps to ensure the security of this colony. By mid-June, intelligence arrived at the Jonathan Hastings house, which had served as Ward's headquarters since the battles of Lexington and Concord 2 months earlier. The news came from a gentleman of unquestionable credibility who had managed to escape Boston on June 9th. His message, delivered to Ward on June 14th, warned that British General Thomas Gage was preparing to strike Dorchester Heights on June 18th. Afterward, he aimed to target Charlestown, then advanced toward Cambridge, hoping to disperse the rebel forces. Ward consulted with Generals John Thomas and William Heath, who were tasked with the defense of Dorchester Heights near Roxbury. He quickly grasped that the Americans lacked the necessary firepower, especially artillery, to adequately defend that position. Instead, he redirected focus to Charlestown, where holding Bunker Hill could offer a strategic advantage. Charlestown's importance was undeniable. Controlling it meant safeguarding the rebel forces' survival. Cambridge sat just 3 miles away, and whoever controlled the heights in Charlestown effectively controlled access to Cambridge. Bunker Hill itself dominated the peninsula, overlooked parts of Boston, and lay outside the range of most British cannons. If the Patriots could act swiftly and disrupt Gage's offensive plans, they might divert attention from Dorchester Heights altogether and force British focus on ousting them from Charlestown. Meeting with his generals at Hastings House, Ward settled on dispatching 3 Massachusetts militia regiments, commanded by Colonels William Prescott, Ebenezer Bridge, and James Fry, roughly 1,000 troops. They were joined by Connecticut militia under General Israel Putnam, as well as an artillery unit led by Colonel Richard Gridley. Prescott would take overall command, with Gridley overseeing the construction of defenses. These troops held their positions on Bunker Hill throughout the initial day. At 6 p.m., the men assembled at Cambridge Common and formed ranks within view of Ward's headquarters. While their formations may have lacked polish, their resolve was clear. Trusting their leaders, they advanced toward the elevation of Bunker Hill. Ward had made his move. The rebels would incite a response from the British by secretly building fortifications atop Bunker Hill. Meanwhile, British reinforcements steadily arrived throughout May, eventually swelling their ranks around Boston to 6,000 troops. Alongside the common soldiers came 3 generals, William Howe, Henry Clinton, and John Burgoyne, by May 25, 1775. Almost immediately, planning began to break the rebel siege of the city. Burgoyne described the British aim succinctly: to create elbow room. British command in Boston resolved to launch an attack first on Dorchester Heights, followed by an assault on Charlestown. However, as dawn broke on June 17th, scouts and sentries alerted General Gage to unexpected developments. Overnight, Patriot troops had built a redoubt atop Breed's Hill, mistakenly identified as Bunker Hill, which forced the British into immediate response. By around 9 a.m., British leadership had settled on a course of action. General Howe would personally lead forces across the Charles River to confront the hastily constructed American defenses. The Royal Navy initiated the assault with a sustained cannonade that lasted roughly 2 hours. Yet those 2 hours of bombardment were insufficient. First, tidal conditions delayed the Navy's ability to ferry troops to the Charlestown Peninsula until midday. Once the 2,400 soldiers landed, they found themselves hindered by marshy ground, fences, and a thin shoreline, funneling them toward a heavily fortified fence line. Worse still, British warships were unable to deliver the supportive fire that Gage and his officers had hoped would weaken the American position. With the British assault delayed, additional militia arrived to reinforce the American defenders. Aware that many of their men had never faced battle before, several colonial officers walked along the front slopes of Breed's Hill, driving stakes into the ground to indicate where troops should wait before firing. At approximately 3:30 p.m., British drums rolled and the assault began. The Redcoats launched themselves against Breed's Hill and the rail fence flanking the Mystic River on the left side of the American defenses. What followed was an intense 2-hour struggle that concluded with the American withdrawal and a brief, exhausted British pursuit. Scattered along the hillside and the nearby shoreline lay over 1,000 British soldiers, dead or wounded. The colonials suffered about 450 casualties, including the revered doctor, Joseph Warren, a key architect of Massachusetts' revolutionary spirit. Despite battling a migraine, he rose from his sickbed and rushed to the redoubt, only to be among the final defenders to fall as the position was overtaken. Though victorious, the British suffered terribly. Bunker Hill marked the beginning of a string of costly, hollow wins for them in the American Revolutionary War. The grueling losses on the Charlestown Peninsula left a lasting impression on General Howe, who would soon replace Gage as Commander-in-Chief of British forces in North America. That grim experience of heavy casualties may well have influenced his cautious strategies in later campaigns across New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Though technically a defeat, Bunker Hill occupies a place of honor in American military history. It remains arguably the most celebrated loss in the 250-year record of U.S. warfare. In the collective American memory, Bunker Hill stands beside triumphant names like Gettysburg and Normandy. The battle validated the strength and determination of the colonial militia, providing a powerful counterpoint to the events at Lexington and Concord just weeks before. The legacy and meaning of Bunker Hill are perhaps best encapsulated by General Nathaniel Greene, who spoke on behalf of those yearning for independence. "I wish we could sell them, the British, another hill at the same price." So the British took the hill. But what did they really win? Yes, the Redcoats raised their flag over a smoking pile of earth, but it came at the cost of 1,000 of their finest, shaken generals, and a war that would only get longer, bloodier, and unwinnable. What began as a desperate overnight gamble on the wrong hill with limited ammo and untrained farmers became the birth cry of a resistance that refused to die. Bunker Hill wasn't a victory on paper, it was a victory in spirit. Because in war, morale is often worth more than a map. And that day, the colonists learned something priceless. They could stand toe-to-toe with the most feared army on earth and make it bleed. But here's where the story turns. What if America needed Bunker Hill to lose so it could learn how to win? What if this so-called defeat shaped the American identity more than the Declaration ever did? And perhaps the most unsettling question of all, would today's America still have the courage to fight, retreat, and still call it a victory? If that thought rattled you, or if you see Bunker Hill differently now, click like, share your take in the comments, and subscribe for more history that doesn't just inform, it makes you feel. Because sometimes the losses that hurt the most are the ones that make us who we are.